Shalom and welcome to the weekend edition of the Daily Dose of Hebrew. Today we're actually going to finish Jeremiah chapter 7 verse 34, and while the chapter ends, the thought of what is happening in these verses is going to continue probably for a couple more verses into chapter 8. But this is the end of a passage where the Lord has been pronouncing his judgment, a very devastating and actually sort of a gruesome judgment upon his people. Their dead bodies will be laying in the streets of Jerusalem and in Topheth in the valley of Gehinnom because there won't be any place to bury them. And this is a final concluding verse. Let's go ahead and read this verse in Hebrew as we get started. V'hishbati me'arei Yehudah u'me'hutzot Yerushalayim kol sason ve'kol simcha kol hatan ve'kol kala ki lechorba tihye haaretz. So we're going to start this one with a vav attached to a perfect. You can see this T ending, but be careful here. You have a T ending, but you also have a dagesh in there, and there's a reason for that. So this is going to be a perfect, and but we know by the context with the vav, this is going to be a perfect consecutive. And like I said, we know that from looking at the previous verses. The Lord is announcing what's going to happen in the future, so this is perfect consecutive. With the T ending on it, it's going to be a first common singular. And this is going to be hifil here, which is why we have this hi prefix right at the very beginning. We don't have a long vowel in here, but we're dealing with the verb Shabbat. Now that should ring some bells for you. You can just sound that out. And the T of the root here, the consonant tau, is that's the reason why we have a dagesh here, because there's actually two taus. You have the tau from Shabbat, and you have the tau from the affirmative here, the first singular affirmative of T, so those two together leave a little dagesh there. So Shabbat means, of course, means to come to an end, to cease, to rest, and so in the hifil would have the idea of to causing to cease, to bring something to an end, to make stop, something along that line. So I will, because it's going to be perfect consecutive, I will cause to end, I will cause to cease from, this is our preposition min, attached to the noun. This is the plural of ir. Remember, ir is an irregular plural, and so when you make it a plural, it becomes arim, and in this case, it's going to be a plural construct with this sereyod right here. So this is from the cities of Judah. Remember, the mean, you can't put can't put the dagesh from the nun into the ayin, and so you lengthen the vowel over here instead. So from the cities of Judah, I will cause to cease from the cities of Judah, and from, once again, same thing here, and again, we have a guttural, so we have to lengthen this vowel instead, and from hutz. Well, hutz is a noun actually for place, literally that which is outside, but usually place or street is probably a better translation for it, and here it's plural. And from the streets of Jerusalem, this is the cities and the streets because they're both in construct. This is in construct with the city of Jerusalem, which is a proper noun, just like cities was in construct with Judah over here. And what is the Lord going to cause to cease from the cities and from the streets? Well, he's going to stop the voice of sason, means rejoicing or jubilation, something normally a very happy occasion, and the voice or sound, for both of these as well, of joy. Simcha is a good old word for joy. The sound, or in this case, probably the voice, because we're dealing with a person as well. This is the bridegroom. The chatan, that's the bridegroom, and the voice of you can imagine what this is going to be. The kala, this feminine noun here, this would be the bride. So all these things, the normal daily life, the normal joys of daily existence and family life, all that is going to cease. And why is it going to cease? Because for lechorba, this is a kametz hatuf right here in this closed syllable. You may recognize Horeb if you were to take those three consonants, like the proper name for Horeb, which is the region of desolation around Mount Sinai. And then we have a lameth at the beginning, and that's going to go with the verb to be over here. Now, we have to go all the way to the end to get our subject over here, which is the land. For the land will be, land is feminine, which is why this is going to be an imperfect. This is going to be a 3 fs with this tau performative because the subject is land. And then the verb to be with the lamed has this nuance of becoming. For the land will become with the Lameth, horba, a desolation, a waste. And that's why all these voices, all these joyful noises and sounds and voices are all going to cease, because it's going to be such a devastation when the Lord brings his judgment upon the land. It's a very, very severe judgment, which we've been watching all through this passage. And as I mentioned, it's going to continue for a couple more verses. Well, let's hide our work here and look at a couple of translations. If we can look first at the Tanakh from the Jewish Publication Society, the more recent 1985, not recent anymore, but more so than the earlier edition. And I will silence, cause to cease, I will silence in the towns of Judah and the streets of Jerusalem. So they translate in, but it's cause to cease from, but it's still the right nuance. I will silence in the towns of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem the sound of mirth and gladness, for exaltation and joy. Okay, that's good, mirth and gladness. The voice of bridegroom and bride. He's not repeating sound each time, but that's perfectly understandable in good English. For the whole land, the land, shall fall to ruin. The land will become a desolation, shall fall to ruin. Not a bad translation right there. And then let's look at another one. This is the New Living Translation, so obviously much more of a paraphrase. Same ideas, but you're going to notice that they've rearranged and combined a number of things here. I will put an end to the happy singing and laughter in the streets of Jerusalem. So the happy singing for sason and laughter for joy, perhaps, and they've taken that with the streets of Jerusalem. The joyful voices of bridegrooms and brides, they've made these plural. For this section over here, the voice of the bridegroom and the voice of the bride will no longer be heard in the sounds of Judah. So they've picked up this causing to cease. They repeated that. Here they translate it, putting to an end. They repeat it. Now it will no longer be heard in the towns of Judah. So they've taken this part and put it down to here. So you can see they've taken this verse apart and rearranged it. They're still getting the general idea. That's a little bit too much for my comfort, but I get the point. And the land will lie in complete desolation. That's actually a pretty good translation and not much of a paraphrase for this. The consequences of the people's sin and their idolatry and their rebellion against God, even when he tried to offer them forgiveness and calling them back to repentance, the consequences of that are so devastating. And we're going to see, even as we begin chapter 8, that there's some more that the Lord is going to do to bring this humiliation and their judgment to a very climax here in this passage. So check back with us soon as we continue a new chapter next time in the weekend edition of the Daily Dose of Hebrew. Shalom.